Greetings. My name is Dexter Robinson, and my daughter Elizabeth Robinson and I will be giving this presentation about the James Library. When Sue and I joined First Parish in 1974, Norwell had just moved its library to a new building, leaving the future of the James Library uncertain. A few years later, as parish clerk, I became interested in the history and bylaws of both the parish and the James Library. Serving as clerk until last year gave me a front row seat to the remarkable transformation of the James Library from a small parish-owned community library into a library and center for the arts serving all people.
I'm Elizabeth Robinson, and my history with the James was starting around age 3 until I graduated high school. I took piano lessons upstairs at the library and spent many hours one floor down reading what probably amounted to nearly every book in the children's section. Librarian Vivian Perry and I would chat about my favorite books. I had many a Sunday school session in lower level, and the life of the library was indistinguishable from my church life as a child. In more recent years, as co-chair of the parish committee, I leaned on my fondness for the James to guide our efforts to find a path forward. I'm eager to share with our current community the history of the James and how that can inform its future.
For anyone who may not be aware, the library is located at 24 West Street, right next to the Kent House, and a short walk from the Meeting House. Here are some of the questions we'll be addressing in this presentation. What is the James Library and Center for the Arts, hereafter referred to as the James? How did it begin? How is it related to First Parish of Norwell, hereafter referred to as First Parish? How did the James become a major outreach program of First Parish, and how is it managed? What are the legal documents related to the James? How did it fit into the church's 2020 strategic plan? And finally, what are the examples of the programs it currently offers? At the end of the presentation, we'll also be happy to answer questions we didn't address. We'll be covering the history of the library, which falls into two phases. The first from its inception to 1975, when Norwell opened a new public library building. The second phase includes the impact of transitioning to a private library and eventually becoming an arts center. We'll then move on to the challenges facing the library in the current century and how it fits into First Parish's outreach programs. We'll address how the James is managed by looking at church and library bylaws, plus the existing legal documents affecting the James. Then we'll examine some goals of First Parish's 2020 strategic plan that relate to the James. And finally, conclude by showing examples of the James's current activities. Understanding what the James is can be best introduced by reading its mission statement. The mission of the James is to inspire creativity, learning, and an appreciation of the arts through music, visual, and literary programs in an historic and welcoming space for the community. As we will see later, an important aspect of this mission statement is that the library and the programs it offers are for all people. The story of the James cannot be separated from First Parish, which created it. First Parish has a long liberal tradition from when it formed in 1642. This eventually led to it becoming a liberal Unitarian church during the 19th century. Unitarianism is a denomination that prioritizes reason, education, and social reform over doctrinal purity. Key figures in the Unitarian movement actively champion the establishment of public libraries as a means of social improvement and education. At a time when most libraries were private or by paid subscription only, a free library for all was not only in keeping with Unitarianism, but it was also transformative for the community. Understanding this helps to explain why a church would build a library intended for the secular public. A commitment to serving the broader community is a theme which runs throughout the history of the James. As we will see later, the definition of the word all will, in time, be expanded. In 1865, Reverend William Fish was called to serve First Parish, actually known as First Parish of South Scituate at the time. Around 1871, he became interested in adding to the collection of Sunday school children's books. Meanwhile, Josiah Levitt James, a Chicago businessman, felt an urge to do something to benefit South Scituate, his native town and parish. His ancestors had been among the early colonial settlers of the town, and he wished to memorialize them in some way. When Mr. James heard of the Sunday School Library project, he sent Reverend Fish a donation of $1,000, which is equivalent to $26,000 in purchasing power today. As a result of receiving such a generous donation, Reverend Fish transformed and expanded the idea of adding to the Sunday School Library by creating a library for all people of all ages. The Sunday School Library books were kept in the church vestibule closet, which was not easily accessible. He and others felt that a separate building was needed to not only house the library, but to make it accessible to all. It would also serve as a meeting place for social, educational, and religious purposes. Mr. James agreed with this expanded plan and sent a second check for $1,000. He eventually provided almost $6,000 towards the building project. Reverend Fish led a public subscription drive that raised approximately $7,600 from the community. This was an unusually large amount to raise for a rural town of about 1,600 inhabitants, and a testament to their investment in a library that served the entire community. He also secured a half-acre site adjacent to the church that was donated by Israel Nash, a First Parish member. Construction was begun and completed in 1873. The creation of the James Library was unique at the time. While some libraries were created and only available to those who could afford subscriptions, the James was funded by Josiah James and town benefactors. The library was non-sectarian and accessible to all at no cost. The James Library was dedicated at a special service on May 1st, 1874, and named in honor of its earliest and most generous contributor, Josiah L. James. Although the library is named after Josiah James, Reverend Fish was, without doubt, instrumental in creation of the library. The James was ideal for a book depository, as well as for church meetings, Sunday school classes, church suppers, and committee meetings. Over time, it became a public meeting place for scores of groups as diverse as the Young Ladies Union during the late 1870s, to the Reading Circle, the Boy Scouts, the Ladies Sewing Circle, the Norwell Garden Club, and many others. Eventually, the town voted to quote, make appropriations to the library.
You know how I can get the volume down on this?
In return for allowing townspeople the privilege of taking out books. In other words, town funds for free access. It was forward thinking, which anticipated the modern public library system by removing the cost barriers that kept working class people from using subscription libraries. These regulations were published sometime after 1888, when the name of the town changed from South Scituate to Norwell. They included such things as the hours of the library, who could use it, and the overdue fine, which was a whopping 1 cent per day.
In 1975, the town opened a new library building, moving many of the books located at the James to its new facility. It's amazing to consider that the James served as Norwell's town library for 100 years. The opening of the new town library marked a new phase in the history of the James. Note that this photo is the current Norwell Library, built in 2021, which replaced the 1975 building. After the town opened its new library building, library hours at the James were shortened. A library committee was formed to study the function of the library and report back to First Parish. In 1976, First Parish voted to authorize the James trustees to operate the library for the coming year. There were 5 trustees, each serving for a term of 3 years. The goals of the library were to maintain the library, enhance the collection of books, and to provide space for parish programs such as the Sunday school and the choir. The James had its own endowment funds to help with maintenance of the building. In 1984, the library expanded its hours to stay open 6 days a week. There was constant use of it for parish activities, and several local organizations rented space. About 2,000 books from Helen Fogg's personal library were received. The library acquired an exceptional number of books useful to historians and genealogists. In 1987, 2 items were put forth at the First Parish annual meeting. The first was to determine whether the parish would authorize the James trustees to apply for grants for maintenance, upkeep, or repair of the James. To do so required executing a preservation restriction in perpetuity on the building. But some parish members were concerned about the long-term implication of having a restriction on the building. The primary motivation for the grant request was to enable painting the entire building. However, it was pointed out that money was available from the Fogg Trust Fund. Consequently, the motion to apply for grants was defeated. The second item was an instruction to the parish committee to work with the James trustees to evaluate whether First Parish should get out of the library business and allow the James trustees to set up an independent not-for-profit corporation to carry out the business of the James in the spirit under which it was set up. Whoops. In 1991, the James Friends Committee was formed. This committee organized a series of Sunday afternoon programs called Sunday at the James. The program was followed by the service of high tea. Publication of the James Journal was revived by the James Friends. Due to the diligence of Vivian and Doug Perry, Bob Allen,
Back
and
up
Paul
again.
Coolidge, a used baby grand piano was purchased to support music lessons on the second floor. In 1994, the James bylaws were amended, changing the number of trustees from 5 to 9, and, quote, allowing some trustees to be elected from outside the church, end quote. In other words, you did not have to be a church member to serve as a trustee. Renovations and expansion of the church parish hall created additional meeting spaces for church programming, making it unnecessary to use space at the James. 1995 is regarded by the James trustees as probably the most active and productive period in its 121-year history. It was a transformative year. The following was accomplished that year. A music advisory committee was created. Larry Wolf, member of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, was hired as artistic director. Generous friends and supporters made it possible to purchase a high-quality parlor grand piano, which became the centerpiece of a venture into an array of new cultural programs. A musical gala inaugurated the James's new Center for the Arts. It was the first of the series of 3 successful chamber music concerts featuring professional musicians brought to Norwell by Larry Wolf. The lower level floor of the library was renovated along with the kitchen to support an art gallery. There was a growing number of patrons, and new groups such as the Chamber of Commerce used the library, as well as others for private musical recitals and seminars. In 1997, the James bylaws were amended to comply with requirements for tax-exempt organizations and their affiliated organizations, adding the paragraph, quote, it shall be the purpose of the James Library to provide members of the First Parish of Norwell and the general community a broad choice of educational, historical, religious, and cultural materials, programs, and activities that affirm and support the principles and purposes of First Parish of Norwell, end quote. In 1999, First Parish bylaws were amended, requiring a majority of the James Board to be parish members. The James report for the year noted the need for a plan to expand the building to support the current programming needs. It also noted that, quote, the issues of making the entire library handicap accessible will not go away, end quote. The meaning of the word all was expanded to include those who could not climb or descend stairs to attend programs held on floors other than the main level. In 2000, the James Board created subcommittees to help with budgeting, long-range fundraising, publicity, program planning, and grant writing. The James Journal was now sent out 2 or 3 times a year to about 700 names. Also in 2000, Vivian Perry, librarian and First Parish member, retired after 18 years. Vivian had a major impact on the management and selection of books in the library. Her husband, Doug Perry, served as chairman of the James Friends for many years. In 2001, Caroline Chapin worked to expand programs and services to the wider community. The James joined the Southeastern Mass Library Services. The library was already a member of the Mass Library Association. During this year, the James emphasized its connection with First Parish via a local television program hosted by parish member Bob Detweiler. There was a discussion about the close relationship between the James and the church, which unfortunately limited the James's eligibility in applying for grants. In 2002, the parish committee reviewed the existing relationship between the church and the James. The James had its own bylaws and a separate budget with a capital account. It used a church facility without a formal lease arrangement and used the church's tax ID number. There was some concern that its activities could result in First Parish being taxed on its unrelated business income. There was also a question of exposing First Parish to liability for torts arising out of the James's activities. As part of this review, the parish committee engaged the services of a law firm, which came back with 2 options. Either continue as is, operating as a program of First Parish, or, as mentioned back in 1987, establish itself as separate tax-exempt corporation. The latter would require that it obtain a lease from First Parish. In 2003, the Parish Committee annual report included how these 2 options were followed up on. The Parish Committee wanted to look for actions that would specifically manage a variety of risks and generally align the mission of the James and the parish. The Parish Committee reviewed the 2 options and established a subcommittee which began a dialogue with the James Board. The Parish Committee met later with the entire James Board. The meeting generated much on which to agree and informed both groups as to their respective long-term goals, where they might diverge, and how they might be mutually supportive. Both institutions were well served by this re-engagement, which largely dispelled undue concerns and misunderstandings on the part of both boards. A schedule of semi-annual meetings to include both boards was created. In 2004, the Parish Committee annual report noted that the previously established subcommittee discussed the relationship between parish and the James. The net result was the recommendation to create a new entity, a trust that would allow members of the community to donate directly to the James via this trust without any donations reverting to the church. Later in 2004, the parish voted to allow creation of a 501c3 irrevocable charitable trust for the benefit of the James, the specific terms of which would be subject to approval by the Parish Committee. The trust was designed to encourage businesses and philanthropic organizations to financially support the James. The charitable trust was officially established in 2006. In 2005, the James bylaws were amended to change its official name to the James Library and Center for the Arts. In 2006, First Parish bylaws were amended to agree with the James bylaws. The James trustees are now referred to as the James Board. It also added trustees of the James Library and Center for the Arts Charitable Trust. The updated bylaws described how the 3 charitable trust trustees are appointed. In 2012, the First Parish voted to permit the Parish Committee to enter into a contract with the Norwell Community Preservation Committee to accept a grant for up to $64,000 for the restoration of the James and to develop with the Norwell CPC an appropriate deed restriction that would protect the historical and community service aspect of the James in perpetuity. The development of this restriction was finally completed and signed in 2016. Also that year, the James Board formed a task force to do a feasibility study on handicapped accessibility at the James. The study was completed a year later. So in 2017, First Parish approved the proposed James Arts for Everyone accessibility project. This included an elevator, 2 new handicapped parking spaces, and accessible entry door. The single bathroom was become fully ADA compliant. The cost of the project was estimated to be $430,000 to be funded by a capital campaign managed by the James Board. The final cost was closer to $481,000. In order to secure funds from the Mass Cultural Council, a use agreement between First Parish and the James Library and Center for the Arts Charitable Trust was created that included the agreement, quote, to allow the James staff to occupy and use the building rent-free in perpetuity, end quote. In 2019, the James Annual Report included a new mission statement, which is the current one read at the beginning of this presentation. The capital campaign was completed. The accessibility project was nearly completed with only a new septic system remaining to be done. The Bloom Whistle Trust made a $200,000 matching grant, which made the project possible. The goal of the James at its inception to serve all people was now expanded to include people with mobility disabilities. In 2020, the James closed due to COVID. Programming was limited. It started to resume late in 2021, going into the next year. During the shutdown, the James Board continued addressing maintenance issues with the building. And then in 2023, programming resumed as before COVID. At the 2024 annual parish meeting, the James Board proposed changing First Parish and James bylaws by removing the requirement that a majority of the James Board be First Parish members. This was proposed by the James as a result of the difficulty in getting First Parish members to serve on the board as well as attend meetings. But after a long discussion, this proposal was tabled. However, a proposal to allow James board meetings to have a quorum without the majority being First Parish members was approved. At the 2025 annual parish meeting, the subcommittee appointed by the parish committee proposed amending the James bylaws, allowing the parish committee to fill open positions on the James board. They also proposed that the James Board chairperson be a First Parish voting member and required that First Parish voting members nominated for the James Board be active First Parish members for at least 3 years. All of these proposed amendments were discussed, but no consensus was reached. The proposals were tabled. 3 non-church members of the James Board and 2 charitable trust trustees resigned related to the controversy over these proposed bylaw changes. Also, at the 2025 annual meeting, as part of creating a new 3-year strategic plan, First Parish voted to allow the parish committee to spend up to $10,000 if needed for legal assistance in defining the legal relationship between the James and First Parish. The question of how the James fits into the outreach programs of First Parish is illustrated by this organizational chart. The parts pertaining to the James are highlighted in yellow. It's listed as a partner organization along with other partner organizations, the Alliance, and Preschool. The other highlighted part is how the James Board members are elected. The James Board makes recommendations to First Parish Nominating Committee of people to fill open positions. To better understand this, we need to look at the bylaws of both organizations.
Some highlights of the First Parish bylaws are related to the James. As indicated, the James Board has 9 members, each serving a staggered 3-year term with no term limits. Similarly, 3 charitable trust trustees serve a staggered 3-year term with no term limits. The trustees are appointed by the James Board. The nominating committee's report given at the First Parish's annual meeting lists James Board and charitable trust trustee nominees. All nominees are approved by a vote of First Parish members. First Parish owns the building, but the James Board manages the James's activities. The bylaws of the James includes its purpose. This statement is similar to all programs of First Parish. Provide programs that affirm and support the mission of First Parish. It states how the James is governed. The James Board, and similar to the First Parish bylaws, describes the James Board composition, length of term, etc. Duties of the board are listed with a $5,000 spending limit on maintenance. A similar statement to the First Parish bylaws is included about how the charitable trust trustees are appointed. The role of the trustees is stated, that is, to manage the provisions of the trust. The positions of James Board members, the hiring of employees to run the library, and the duties of the secretary and treasurer are also included in the bylaws. This is a summary of the legal documents recorded at the Plymouth Registry of Deeds related to the James Library and Center for the Arts. Each of these was previously mentioned. First was the creation of the Charitable Trust, which solved the problem of people not wanting to donate to the James if it could revert back to the church. The other two were necessary to obtain significant funding for the Arts for Everyone accessibility project that made the handicapped access renovations possible. In 2020, First Parish developed a 5-year strategic plan. There were some significant recommendations that related to the James. A major recommendation was for First Parish to expand outreach and increase First Parish's visibility in the community at large. A major goal was for First Parish to become well known and respected as a moral leader of the community by providing service to its community and beyond, reflecting Unitarian Universalist values. It was recommended that the church take intentional steps to increase visibility among the community at large. One aspect of this was to encourage and expand joint programming and partnerships with affiliated and like-minded organizations like the James. The strategic plan noted that, quote, the hope and expectation for expanded outreach is to create a new path for persons to become involved with First Parish, even if they never become formal members of the church. It's important to recognize that when the 2020 strategic plan was written, the James had already been providing community outreach for decades through its many program offerings. Moreover, for over 25 years, the James had been guided by a board that included non-First Parish members whose talents were leveraged, allowing it to deliver a diverse and vibrant array of programs to the community.
Here's a list of some of the current activities. Over the years, programming at the James has expanded beyond art exhibits and concerts to include free programs for families. The library has offered programs engaging with many organizations, including the Norwell Public Library, the Norwell Historical Society, the Norwell Council on Aging, the First Parish Preschool, and others. This slide depicts the variety of events, some free, some involving both children and adults. The Books in Bloom event involved South Shore artists who depicted their favorite book titles in floral art. This slide illustrates the variety of concerts ranging from classical music to jazz. Performers range from soloists to groups of singers. Likewise, art shows and programs range from displayed works of individuals to a group of artists. The media has also varied from paintings to three-dimensional objects such as wood carving. The story of the James Library and Center for the Arts is both remarkable and inspiring. For over 150 years, it's functioned as a major outreach program of First Parish. Throughout this long partnership, both institutions have been united by a shared commitment to serve all people. This historical overview also shows at various times the challenge of determining the appropriate relationship between the James and First Parish. The challenge now is for the First Parish to reach a clear consensus on what that relationship should be moving forward. Finally, I would like to conclude with words written by Betsy Gordon, who was the James Board chairperson in 2006. She said, quote, "We are grateful to First Parish for supporting the James as a library and center for the arts. In doing so, First Parish has provided the community with something very special. The James enhances the quality of life for church members and local residents alike."